Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, which is a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Our mantra is educate, enlighten, and entertain. And the views of the guests may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, I always have phenomenal guests on today. And today is extra special because I have not only one phenomenal guest on, I have three phenomenal guests on today. Sisters, which is a first to have three sisters on. I've interviewed a brother and a sister, husband and wife. It's the first time I'm interviewing three sisters. So I want to tell you just a little bit about my guest. With me today is Natalie, Elliot Handy, and Emilie Elliot, JJ Elliot Hill. They are hosts of the phenomenal podcast, Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver. They also have Sisterhood of Care, LLC. And Natalie is the founder and chief energy officer. They are full of energy. If you've never heard their podcast before, I highly recommend you going to check it out because it is a very informative, interesting podcast for caregivers. And even if you're not a caregiver, you probably will be or need one. And I just like to promote other people because, folks, I don't have all the answers. And I believe in supporting each other. So I want to welcome with me today Natalie Elliot Handy, Emilie Elliot, and JJ Elliot Hill. Welcome, lovely ladies, to Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you.
I am doing great. How are you? You're all in different parts, aren't you?
Yes. We are.
Yes.
So, we laugh and say, this is JJ. So we sound so much alike because we are from the South, so you'll get the accent. But we sound a lot alike, so people tell us I'm from our podcast. But, you said, tell us a little bit about you. So this is JJ, and normally what we say is I'm the oldest. Natalie will at some point tell you my age, but I am the oldest, and my responsibility in life was simply to keep Natalie and Emilie alive. That is all my responsibility was. So that gives you a little insight as to what I was responsible for, Betsy. That is truly my history.
That's funny.
Natalie,
and this is Natalie. You can tell me because clearly I'm the most directive. And I am the middle child, also known as Yellow Mustard, since JJ was Gray Poupon in our family, being the oldest. And she just happens to be 50. So I might as well go ahead and throw that out there for everybody. And so my job was to give JJ a job. And so, really, really, really happy to be on here. To be able to talk to your listeners.
Well, thank you. And, it's funny, Natalie, I'm also a middle child.
Oh,
so I have to ask you, do you have middle child syndrome?
Of course I do. I'm never right. I mean, I'm always, that's why I said I was Yellow Mustard. What are you talking about? So, yes, I do.
Okay. How about Emilie?
Yes, we have saved the best for last.
I love it.
I'm the baby, a.k.a. Baby Angel. I am the hands-on caregiver, mama of 3 kids, and I help take care of mom hands-on for about 8-9 months.
I have a question to ask the three of you because a lot of siblings, they don't get along, or if they do get along, they might come to differences with their parents' care. How are the three of you handling that, taking care of your mom who has Parkinson?
So
I feel
we'll just kind of pass
personally,
around the questions.
yeah, I feel personally each of us have our own strengths, and we know it very well, and so they tap in to whatever strength. Like, I'm physically a great caretaker. JJ is always in control. Natalie is details. So any paperwork, insurance, and together we're like just a great trio of work. That's how I look at it.
I
think
that
Betsy,
is
to your point. Oh, go ahead, Betsy. I'm sorry. No,
go ahead.
Point, I think at any time, though, and they'll both chime in on that, it's hard to make decisions that help mom. If there is a disagreement about it, we've had differing views, but we come to an agreement. And even if you have a differing view, you'll still support the final decision. We all are in consensus that once a decision is made, we follow that decision. We never go into it and say, well, I didn't make that decision, so I'm not going to help you. We always go forward together.
That is beautiful because, even with any disease, right, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, whatever the diagnosis is of the parent, it's so important for the family members to put aside their differences and for the sake of the parent and to give the parent the best care and to, of course, hopefully the parent let their wishes be made known. And that's a whole nother show of making your wishes known. And I think that's so important, as you pointed out, to know the strengths of each person and to use those strengths for the best care of the parent. And I think it's so important to be able to relay information to each other. Now, obviously, the three of you seem very close, which is very nice to see. Like in my family, where we're not close at all. And I think it's important to relay the information now. Or is there one of you that's the spokesperson that relays the information from doctors to each other?
Well, I'll jump in. I think we're all trying to be respectful of one another since there's three of us and we can't see each other. So when it comes to doctors, it is very much everybody has their role. And so JJ and Emilie take more of the lead on the physicians related to going to doctor's appointments, getting reports, who is the primary contact, because there's three of us. If all three of us were the primary contact for example, Dr. Barbu, who is her neurologist, that would be a problem. And so they are familiar with all three of us and know that we can, but there is a primary person who is gone, and they have been amazing to work with. Emilie, because she is local, JJ and I are long-distance caregivers. So I live in Virginia, JJ lives in Florida, and Emilie's in Tennessee, where our mom is located. And so, honestly, it really varies, but I think but we have a running text stream that we constantly are texting each other updates, as well as, adding in some funny memes. So it really just varies on the medical. But, I mean, if there's something around, like yesterday we had an issue, our mom needed some support. JJ called me and said, hey, what do you think that I need to say to this, to the ER or to the emergency department? And I said, say this, and this, because my background is in behavioral health and I'm used to dealing with regulatory bodies and utilization review and all that. But JJ is the primary contact, so I just basically help feed information to the sisters to make sure they have what they need, and then I step in wherever I need to step in.
And I think that's great. Well, and as Natalie said, I had a question. Mom has she had to go to the ER for a medical issue and had just an outpatient surgery today. But it's important to note Natalie answered the question about they wanted to send her home and then come back this morning. So that really was a poor decision on their part. Natalie knows the regulations and what we needed to say. So I contact Natalie and say, what do I need to say? And then I talk to, the right person. But Emilie is there on site. And so you see it kind of all balances. I'm talking to doctors. Natalie's telling us what to deal with the insurance. Emilie's the touchy-feely. She's on site. And together, we've always said, Betsy, for someone that it is a single person trying to manage an illness like this, we don't know how they do it. I can't imagine because it does. Natalie always says, God knew what he was doing when he gave Mom 3 daughters because it takes all 3 of us.
Yeah.
It takes all 3 of us and what we're able to do to really take the best care of her that we can.
Well, I have to say this. I hope I don't embarrass the 3 of you when I say this, but you 3 sisters are such a good role model for other families. Of this is how we could get along. This is how we could help Mom the best. Communication, showing our strengths and using that. Not giving someone a task that they're not able to do. I think, in having someone have a specific, if you want to call it job or responsibility, and the 3 of you exchanging information because sharing information and communication is probably what I want to say. Communication among siblings and other family members is just so important. When there's a disconnect, it's really the person who needs the care that suffers. Yeah. And you 3 are definitely, I hope I didn't embarrass you, but I really think that you really are the role model for how a family should be and what you do. If you take, for instance, my family that's fractured, I don't have to worry my family doesn't listen to my show. My mom, they don't even acknowledge me. My mom was just in the hospital, and my brother, he did have a text, group chat between my sister and I and our cousins. But I don't trust my brother, as is sorry to say, to give us the full information. Because when my brother was sick, my older brother, he did not tell my mother the full information of what was going on with Bradley, which I did not think was right at all. A parent, I don't care if I was 90, I want to know, is my son, what is his condition? Give me the worst scenario, give me the best, give me the middle. To tell me the truth. And I think that's just how I feel. I think that people should be truthful. Hey, here's plan A, here's plan B. And now because of what happened, I don't believe my brother being truthful. My mom had an episode, I think this was her 4th heart attack. And they couldn't do a heart catheterization. God bless her, she's 93 and a half. They couldn't do a CAT scan. She got sent back to her facility with medication. And to be honest, I think that's all that they can do for my mom at this age. I don't think they can do anything else. But let's be truthful about that. Then say that. I'm one, I guess. I don't believe in false hope, in giving someone false hope about it. I'm a Jersey girl. Well, my brother's from New Jersey too, but I just think be truthful. And it's great that you are truthful with each other.
Well,
Excuse me.
I think it's important to also say, though, Betsy, and we will, if somebody else can chime in with me, that it is not always unicorns and rainbows with us.
Right.
So there are days when we say, I don't want to talk to you. I'm not happy with you right now. So, but I think acknowledging that and saying, look, I'm mad at you because you made a poor decision or you were hateful with me. So, but it's really just, and I think we all say it, sometimes we got to give one another a little grace, step back, and then, but at the very cornerstone of it all, realize that we are sisters and our relationship is so important to us that we'll do our best to fix that. But we do get mad at one another.
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah,
well,
I think that's important to note that it's and you know we have strong personalities and we really believe in our own opinions. That's what makes us so wonderful. But it is true. It can't be personal. You cannot make this personal. But you also can't, it's very easy, and we talked about it yesterday. We're doing an end-of-year recording on the podcast, kind of talking about the lessons learned over 2023, both for the podcast, but also caring for our mom. And you can't take this, you don't want to lose your sibling bond either. And so we talk a lot about, you know, when Emilie was the primary caregiver for our mom, that, you know, we would call Emilie and we would just talk about mom, and we didn't talk about anything else. And that's because mom always, because of the nature of her complex chronic illness, it's very consuming. And I think that's so important for caregivers to hear is we hear you. It's consuming. It consumes us. But we have to be so intentional to make sure that we ask Emilie about what's going on with her personally, and then vice versa. She's asking us that we remember to tell her about what else is going on in our life, because we're so much more than caregivers. That's it. It's so much more. We can't just be just one thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And you all have, I know, Natalie, you work outside the home, if I could remember. One of you runs a store from your home or a warehouse?
I'm a business owner, so yeah, I'm the one that works independently. So then Emilie also works outside the home. So yeah, we're all employed. So we all have, you know, we're all married, have relationships. So yeah.
Well, and it also shows you too, Betsy, because, you know, there's 53 million unpaid caregivers, which there's way more than that because that was from a 2020 AARP study. But of those 53 million, 60% work. We are that example. We, you know, we talk about, you know, we would love to see employers be more caregiver friendly. We know how caregiving impacts our daily life. I mean, Emilie and I are both working right now, and we've taken our lunch break. But, you know, and it's totally fine. We're happy to do it. But, you know, we had an update from our mom this morning, our Aunt Jeanne, who's also close by, who's our mom's sister, to provide us an update about what's going on. Or we have to stop work and we jump in and help where needed. And that's not always easy to juggle. And so we have to give each other permission and grace to say, I need you to take this. I can't take it right now. In the sense of not like, I can't take this call, or I can't, mom needs some help. Can you talk to mom? And that goes back to what JJ said about, you know, God bless anybody who is doing this by themselves, because you can't hand it off.
True. I mean, I know that personally because it was just my son and I. So yeah,
you know, Betsy,
it is difficult. Go ahead.
I think it's also important to know, you know, Natalie was given those numbers, is that when we made the decision, when mom came out of assisted living, Emilie took care of mom 24/7. And she did that, and she stepped out of the workforce to do it. So you have so many caregivers out there. Emilie was not able to work because we really didn't have respite care. We had somebody that would come in, I don't know, we had like 12 hours a week or something, where maybe Emilie could get a break. We had a couple different ways. But so Emilie wasn't able to work, and prior to that, we had a time where we had moved Mom to North Carolina when I lived there. But the only reason that I could really work around that was because I owned my own business. And so we keep, pounding on employers and pounding on the government because most people, they're killing themselves, financially, physically, mentally, because there's just not that many hours in the day. And I think that was one of the things, one of the reasons why we really started the podcast to say, everybody talks about, oh, you're a caregiver for your mom, and that's so great, but it's hard. And I think was the main reason, Nat, with you and Jason and with all of us, is to say, this is a hard job, and you have every right to say, this is hard, and I just need to talk about it, and somebody else to say, yeah, it's hard. You can say that.
Yes, definitely. It took me, in 2014, I went on Facebook, and I joined all these support groups, and I was so surprised to hear people talking about how they felt about caregiving, and some even went underground because they didn't want to be judged by their family, to say, what, caregiving can be great at times, and it can also suck at times. Let's be real. And people take offense to that when you speak how you feel and tell the truth. That sometimes, it's not always pretty being a caregiver. It's a difficult road, and there's a lot of different situations, problems that come up in the journey. And you had mentioned your podcast, and I'm going to ask, with all that you three do with your jobs, caregiving, how did you decide, and how do you even have time, ladies, you are super ladies, to do a podcast? Because I know that takes time.
Well, I had this, I think beyond caring for my mom, I cared for my husband last year, who was a cancer survivor. And so not only was I a solo caregiver for my husband because we moved into another state to receive his treatment, but I really could not have done and supported Jason had it not been for my sisters. And, also a select number of friends who, were really close confidants that I trusted to be able to speak freely to. And so when we moved back after his treatment, I didn't feel okay. And in talking with the sisters, I was saying to Jay and Em, I was like, hey, I just feel this way, and I have these feelings and these thoughts and emotions and whatnot. And they were like, yeah, me too. It's frustrating. I think that's normal. And we all kind of said to each other, we can't be the only one who feels this way. And so I was on Facebook, and I saw something about learn how to podcast, and none of the three of us had ever listened to a podcast, which makes it funnier. And I said to the sisters, I'm like, we should start a podcast. And they were like, great idea. And so that's really kind of how it started. And we had no clue the response that we were going to get to this podcast. No clue. So today we started our podcast on January 24th. We dropped 10 episodes. We've learned a lot along the way, but we've now by the end of the year, at our 1-year anniversary, we'll have well over 100 podcast episodes that we've dropped, and we're ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally that people are listening to us. And we have just been so blessed by the people like yourself who have come on and shared your story, and we've just taken so much from the stories, and we know our audience and listeners absolutely feel the same way. We can relate.
Yes. Well, congratulations to the three of you, and I just want to tell the audience I was a guest back in August, and the show's going to air in February. I believe you
Yes,
had
ma'am.
told me a while back. So keep checking. Like, I think that it's so important now. I'm almost envious of caregivers now, ladies, because there are podcasts such as yours, and informative and educational, and there's so much information out there now that was missing when I started with my husband Matt 13 years ago, and even less 23 years ago with my mother-in-law. There was I don't even know there was podcasts. I didn't even know there was internet back then. If it was just starting 23 years ago. But I just want to congratulate the three of you, because you are all phenomenal. And you even connected with a military organization, I think. You were doing a series about the military veterans.
Yeah, Jay, if you want to talk about the Heroes Caring for Heroes series.
I was like, Matt, you could share. I'm happy to share. So we are, for the month of November and early December, we started with an idea to do Heroes Caring for Heroes. That's the name of the series. And it started out because November is National Family Caregivers Month. It's also Veterans Day and Remembrance Day. And so we started out with an idea to do podcast of caregivers for veterans and military personnel, and it grew. We had some amazing guests, first of all, that blessed and touched us. Elizabeth Dole Foundation, Wounded Warrior, the Fisher House, Smoky Mountain Service Dogs, Healing Stripes. Like, we had all these organizations that came on board with us and said, we're so glad, basically, that you're pointing out that there are caregivers for these military personnel that have been wounded and they need care, but these caregivers this is a lifetime of disabilities. And Norwegian Cruise Line came on board as our primary sponsor for this. And we were just floored because their president of Norwegian, David Herrera, is a veteran. And they have an amazing veteran appreciation, military appreciation program that they've put together. And they came on board to sponsor us for this Heroes Caring for Heroes program. And all I can say is it has been it's been a passion project. I know Natalie has worked so hard on it, but the response that we've gotten has just been unbelievable. I know I've loved every minute of it, every guest, and we can't say thank you enough for all the sponsors that have joined us, all the partners that have joined in to just work with us on it.
That is incredible, because I feel that our veterans deserve the best care, and there are many young veterans that are facing a lifetime of a disability that need care, and they should receive it, absolutely, and to bring light to it. So I'm glad that your show, Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver, is doing that you have done it, and I'm sure you'll probably have it again, next November, or maybe throughout the year. But I just want to commend you for doing that. I think that's really wonderful. I'm a daughter of a World War II veteran, so I am patriotic, and I think that that was very, very important for you to bring light to veterans. And I just have to ask you this. You're welcome. You three sisters, do you think, I'm just curious about this, do you think you all three of you, I know there's moments when you may not get along, but do you think you three just gel and get along because of how your parents raised you? Did they raise you to get along and to love each other?
Jay, you want to take this one?
You know, there's a lot of, and we say this, there's a lot of family dynamic. There's a lot of history with our family. Our parents they were married very young. You know, it's funny. Our parents were they were married very young, and my mom was 17, Dad was 18. They were high school sweethearts. I was born when Mom was 19. Natalie when she was 21. I think Emilie when she was 23. So my parents were really young. They worked all the time. And so we raised one another. And one of the main reasons is because Natalie ran off 2 babysitters in the summer of '84. I think it was the
that is fact. I would like to confirm that I did. I can confirm that I did run off babysitters, but I believe in building resiliencies in adults.
Yeah. So my dad said, you all can take care of each other because I'm not hiring another babysitter. And we were raised in a small town. We had a large family on both sides. We were raised with cousins, and, you know, we went to lunch on Sundays after church. Family was important, but it was a large, extended family. You know, my grandmother would say funny things like, you know, such and such bought beer at the service station at the other end of town, and then somebody told on them, and somebody told on them, and somebody found out at church. So that's what happens when you're raised in a small town. But I think it's just, I think the family, the entire family aspect of it, aunts and uncles and cousins, and a lot of that tied in. It wasn't just our parents, but there's a lot of extended family relationships. Even now, our Aunt Jeanne is, she's like a second mom. She's 78, but she's a caregiver for our mom still. And I feel like there's a lot of people still in my family, and I live 18 hours away. My cousin Richie, I know Rod, my Aunt Deborah, that I could still call on. Family, and you know, family's different these days.
Yes.
These people I was raised with, and I think that those values were just instilled with us, that you did the best you could because they were family. So that was a long answer to your question, but it's all about family. You take care of your family.
I think a lot depends on how the parents, you know, raise the children. If you're raised in a environment such as I was, where parents show downright favoritism and put one child up against the other, you're not going to breed closeness. You're going to cause division. And I think it really does make a difference on how the parents raise the kids, and of course on the individual, you know, people involved. But I just think it's fantastic how well the three of you just do your, you know, podcast and do the caregiving. I think it was funny when someone mentioned they didn't know what a podcast was and didn't listen to one. I can relate to that because I did not know what a podcast was either. And until I went on Jeannie White's show, who's the station manager at Pastoral Talk Radio, I never heard of internet radio other than the 2 major ones at that time, Cyrus and Pandora. Other than that, I did not know anything about that world. And it sure has mushroomed, hasn't it? Now it's like everyone and their brother has a podcast. Even the movie stars are getting in on having their own podcast. And in your on your podcast, you interview a variety of caregivers, and I'm sure you learn from each one. Definitely.
Yeah. You know, I'll say this, Betsy, it's really important for us. Our podcast is, and we feel this is pretty different, it's a podcast for caregivers by caregivers. And we stick very clear, like there's 4 areas we hit on, which is relate, educate, inspire, and, of course, laugh, because we like to have a really good time. And as caregivers, we know that if you don't if you don't laugh, you'll probably cry a little. And at some point, you probably have cried, and now you can laugh about it. But I think it was really about, we didn't want other people to feel as alone as we felt at times. And and the beauty of a podcast is, and Emilie can speak to this, is, and I have personal experience, is there's times when you can listen to things. You may not be able to sit down and watch something or read something, but to be able to have a little something in your ear, and you can listen, and you can listen anywhere, it's different. And it can be like, even if it's 15, 30 minutes, it can make the difference in your day to be like, oh my gosh, thank God somebody else has had that happen to them too. I thought I was the only one.
Yes. Yes, I can definitely relate to that. And I have told people, even on this show and in my group, if you could watch Netflix and binge on that, then listen to a podcast and educate yourself. Or listen to a webinar, even if you have to put earplugs in. I had to do that. I mean, I'd had 40 minutes to listen at once, but I would put my earplugs in, listen maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then, go back to it. It's so important to get that encouragement and hear other people's stories, because caregivers definitely learn from each other. And education is so important in having your journey be easier for you and for your loved one. Education makes such a big difference. I know it did for me, between my mother-in-law, when I didn't have any, because there wasn't any information out there, to how I handled Matt, because there was the education out there. Now there's even more. So I totally agree with you all.
Totally agree.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming on today. And how can the audience connect with you?
Well, I'm happy to jump in and share.
Go
ahead,
Natalie. Well, I'll start out with social media platforms. So we are everywhere. Yes. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which I think is now called X, YouTube. We are active on LinkedIn, and we do lots of fun videos on TikTok. And we also have a website, so that's going to take you to our podcast. But, Natalie, what about our podcast? Where can you find those?
And the website and the podcast is Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver. And so you will not miss us, because you'll see all three of us with our awesome glamour shots. If you're older, you know what glamour shots are. And so we have our awesome photos, so you can't miss us. But Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver, and the website is confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com. And we also put out blogs. You can subscribe to our newsletter. And one of the really cool things that we've partnered with Benefit Hub is if you sign up, there's a discount code that caregivers can get through Benefit Hub that we partner. They're a fantastic partner, and they can get cost savings. And that was really important to us, because we know that caregiving on average, and this is even shocking, depending on your race, the average cost to caregivers to provide support is almost is right over $8,000 a year. And it actually can be a lot more expensive. I know we probably have spent a lot more than that in travel costs and things like that. But it can be even more costly for individuals who are Hispanic or African American or Black. You've got, it varies, but the cost is easily $10,000 a year. And so we partner with Benefits Hub to try to help out and give discounts, and all of our vendors and sponsors that work with us, we share their information because they are supporters of caregivers.
That is awesome. Very awesome. And Emilie, did you have any last words of wisdom?
Last words, you can always find us on any podcast station, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Ladies, what's the other ones that we're on?
We're on Audible if you want to check out Audible. Pretty much anywhere that you can find your favorite podcast. We also will give a big shout out to the Whole Care Network. They actually have lots of podcasts for caregiving. We're found there. And we're also on UK Health Radio, which is heard by 1.4 million listeners around the world. They have some great caregiving podcasts. We always tell people, there's so much information out there, Betsy. Listen to our podcast. Listen to other podcasts. Just listen to something, because that's self-care. And Emilie always says self-care is incredibly important. New podcasts are released every Tuesday, and there's lots of good stuff coming up throughout this year. Taboo topics, topics about love and relationships, of caregivers, because these are things that are sometimes not spoken about, and we need to talk about them. They don't need to be topics that are off limits, because we need to talk about them. So we're excited for the new year, and we are so thankful that we got to talk to you, Betsy, and your podcast is coming out.
Well, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate you coming on, as I know you're all busy. And yes, talking about family and relationships. I have covered those topics myself a while back, even when I was doing the show by myself, just talking about my own experiences. And I think what I love about your show, your podcast, is that it's authentic and it's real. Like, people aren't putting on a phony, it's all, rainbows and, unicorns. These are real people talking about real life issues, and we need to hear these stories. We learn from each other. I know I listen to other podcasts, because I want to learn, and you should never stop learning. Education is so important, especially as a caregiver. How I wish that there was your show 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. I wish there were people talking about being a caregiver and the reality of being a caregiver when I was going through it. And I really appreciate what you all do for caregivers and veterans, and you three are like the three mighty musketeers. That's what comes to my mind. And I like to laugh and have a good time, too, on my show. I think it's so important for caregivers and people who are, let's face it, folks, if you're not a ready caregiver, you're going to be. Let's just face it. Listen to the shows now. Get the information now. Because it is so vitally important. I can't even say that enough. I know I probably sound redundant, but education is so important for the caregiver. It is important to know how to handle challenging behaviors. I wish I knew 23 years ago. But I'm glad. There are people out there now, and there's a lot now to choose from. But I highly recommend to the audience to read the blog. Good information about Natalie, Emilie, and JJ will be in the blog, how you could listen to their podcast, how you can connect with them. I highly recommend you listening to their podcast, Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver. So important. Go on their website and get the information that you need. And I want to thank you all again for coming on my show, Natalie, Emilie, and JJ. I really appreciate it. You gals are just wonderful. I can't say enough good things about you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome. Folks, thanks for listening. Please share this show to help other people. I do this show to help other people, and I need your help. So please share. If you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy. It is for free on Spotify, Spreaker, YouTube, iHeart, to name a few. And I want to thank Jeanne White, who's station manager, who writes the blog, produces the show. And I want to thank Lillian Cauldwell, who's CEO, Pastor World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And again, thanks for listening. Please educate yourself if you're a caregiver. And even if you're not, please listen to these podcasts and get educated now, because I can guarantee you that someone you know, if not yourself, will need a caregiver. And unfortunately, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, it's on the rise, folks. There's no cure. It's on the rise. You get informed now about these diseases. And that's my suggestion. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you can be anything, please be kind, shine your light bright, because we all need it now more than ever. And if you want to, you could follow me on my Facebook page, Betsy E. Wurzel, Wurzel, and I have a support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, which everyone's welcome to join. And that's what I have to say today. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, which is a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Till we chat again, be safe, everyone. Bye-bye now.